Welcome to Sales, Tax, and More, your go-to resource for all things state tax related. Now, here is your host, Michael Fleming.
Hi, Mike Fleming here. I am the founder of Sales, Tax, and More, and today's host of the Sales, Tax, and More podcast, where we talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is, of course, sales tax. So I have Jeremy Weiss with us here today, and he's done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs. And today we're flipping the script. Instead of me interviewing Jeremy, Jeremy's going to interview me.
Yeah.
So,
Mike, thanks for having me. And I just want to give a brief introduction to you. If you don't know Michael Fleming and his company, he's considered one of the USA's leading authorities when it comes to sales tax. And the episode is brought to you by Sales Tax and More, and they assist companies and their trusted advisors with their sales tax needs. And they offer consulting and research, registrations, returns, and much more. And over the years, they've assisted thousands and thousands of sellers, both foreign and domestic, with their tax issues in the United States and Canada. You can check out more at salestaxandmore.com for more information, and check out more episodes where he talks about some cautionary tales, some interesting case studies. And so, Michael, this we want to talk and tell people about why you started the podcast and what's the show all about. And we will talk about Michael's his background, and he's got some really, really interesting stories. So stay tuned for that. But Mike, tell me, why did you start the podcast?
well, the main reason is the sales tax world has literally been stood on its head since June 21st, when we had the Wayfair decision come out from the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court basically said you don't have to have a physical connection with any of these states before they can require you to collect its sales tax. And that's taken so many companies and so many CPAs and other accounting professionals by surprise. My goal is to help educate people onto what they need to do, why they need to do it, and what they need to look out for. So our target audience are really CPAs, other accounting professionals, and really anyone. I mean, if you're selling, online, if you're an e-commerce seller, some of this, you've been exposed to it, but a lot of companies, traditional brick and mortar type companies, don't realize that this applies to them also.
Yeah. So you'll cover a wide range of topics kind of related to sales tax.
Absolutely.
So let's get into your story a little bit. You have an interesting background. Just start off, you didn't have a normal commute to high school.
No, not at all. I grew up in a city or neighborhood called Rockaway Beach. And it's part of New York City, but it's way far out. It's about 26 miles to Manhattan as the crow flies. Now, take buses and trains, especially back then, it was a little bit different. So I went to Xavier, which was a military Jesuit high school, all boys, and went there. It was on 16th Street in Manhattan, and it took me about an hour and a half to get there. And, I played all sorts of sports in high school, rugby, wrestling, basketball, football. You had to get up early in the morning to get there. Sometimes we do our running in the morning, and, we do practice in the afternoon. So I'm leaving the house, anywhere, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, not getting home at night till 9 o'clock, which people hear that and they're like, are you out of your mind? And, I guess I was a little bit, but I was very active in the sports. It was a really good school. And I think that's where it really gave me a lot of my work ethic that helped me be successful in later years.
You were recruited for football. What position did you play?
I played both ways in high school. In college, I was recruited as a nose guard. So found out that that was a little bit too much like a job. and I was also recruited to wrestle.
Hmm.
And I transferred my sophomore year to Hofstra University from Southern Connecticut University, and wrestled for them. They were a Division I wrestling school, very good wrestling program. So,
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah,
actually, some of the toughest people I know are wrestlers for sure. You grew up in an interesting area too.
yeah. Rockaway Beach. By the way, I transferred to Beach Channel High School my junior year because the football program um, at Xavier, which is the school in Manhattan, was dropped to division, and there were going to be less scouts there. And I was planning on going to college on a football scholarship. So this neighborhood, this local high school, was about 20 minutes, had girls in it. Big wins there right away.
Teenage boy, yeah, all boys school. It's
yeah,
not as enticing.
But right across the bay is where is a neighborhood called Howard Beach, and back in the late 70s, early 80s, that's where John Gotti and a lot of the other organized crime mafia types lived, and all of their children came to school in my school. So lots of interesting stories. Some of them we'll probably have to talk about another time, but it was definitely an experience growing up.
Yeah. I'm holding back asking questions about it because I don't want you to get in trouble naming names, but I'm sure there were some crazy stories from that time. So fast forward a little bit, Mike, what was the first career?
I started on Wall Street in 1986. So that is where I've really spent a lot of my career, is either on or around Wall Street. So very, very interesting. I was in their training program, and I actually got all my licenses the week of the crash in 1987. So not good timing there, but again, the work ethic from just, traveling that much. I'd get in early. I was the first one there, last one to leave. And I came to the attention of, some of the higher ups, like Mitch Rosenthal took me underneath his wing, and he really was very influential on my entire career. And then other people like
what
Jim
did Mitch
King.
do?
He taught me the business. He taught me about life. I mean, he was really a great mentor for years. And when Mitch moved to Dallas, that's how I ended up in Dallas. They asked me to come down and work in Dallas with them for Bear Stearns. And I eventually ended up doing that. So I'm very, very thankful to Mitch for a lot of reasons. Dallas, you make the same money in Dallas as you did in New York. Only the cost of living was, so much cheaper. So New York, love New York. My whole family's up in New York. Go back and visit whenever I can. But after being here in Dallas, I may not always stay in Dallas, but I'm never going back and living in New York. It's
and then another mentor, Mitch. You had Jimmy Kane.
Well, Jimmy, I don't know if I'd call him a mentor or not, but back then he had the lights out in his office all the time. Jimmy eventually became the CEO of Bear Stearns. But back then, Ace Greenberg was the CEO, and you only got called into Jimmy's office. He had a big corner office. Lights were always out. And you only got called in there or talked to him. I mean, he wasn't always the most friendly of people. Everyone was always afraid of him. But because I was there so early all the time, he'd stop by and say hi. And, we'd meet in the bathroom. He'd strike up a conversation. So I had a little bit of a different relationship with him than most people at that time were thinking. So I don't know if he would remember my name.
His nickname?
I'm sorry?
His nickname? You had a nickname?
No, I don't know. Oh, Darth Vader. Yeah. So they referred to him as Darth Vader, Star Wars, still big in everyone's mind. And, he was just, feared. But I always had a different outlook just because of my interactions with him.
So after Wall Street, you did commercial real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. We had all of our clients, and we were, heavily invested in healthcare stocks. And at that point, Hillary Clinton had a healthcare plan. And when Bill Clinton won the debate, George Bush lost, and at that point, everyone knew that, okay, we're getting a new president. We thought that stocks were going to zero. I mean, absolutely. Inflation was going to go through the roof, and it was just going to be terrible for any type of equities and hard assets. That's where you needed to be. Real estate. That's where you needed to be. So about 5 or 6 of us left, including Mitch, my mentor at that point, and we went out and started putting together real estate investments that we were selling to institutions and large pension funds. But boy, were we wrong. I mean, real estate did well, but the stock market went straight up. So bad timing on that for stocks. But it was very, very very rewarding being in creating these securities and gaining a whole new type of experience, which we then leveraged and got into mortgages. So we were putting together pools of mortgages, buying them from, small brokerage firms, larger brokerage firms, putting them into pools, and then again, selling them to Wall Street. So that's the gist of how my career has evolved. A lot of it's been on the financial side. So
what did you take from that experience? What did you learn from being on the financial side?
A lot of pressure. There were so many variables that you didn't have control over. I mean, the market dictated a lot of this. So you could be very successful, do everything right, and still be wrong. So a lot of unnecessary stress. And, a lot of people find sales tax stressful. I actually find it very relaxing compared to some of my
earlier days trained you.
My earlier days, once again, have trained me very well.
So how did you get into sales tax?
That's a great question. I don't know of anybody who says, when I grow up, I want to be a sales tax consultant or a sales tax analyst. I mean, I've never heard that in my entire life. We all just sort of fall into it, and no different for me. I started having to do some of the different taxes associated with the whichever business we were involved in at that point. And I started liking it and said, hey, I wonder, if there can be, a career in this. I still wasn't sold on the idea, and an opportunity came along, and I was able to get involved. And that's when I really started, I get bit by the bug, as people say, and I couldn't get enough of this. I wanted to learn everything. And that's how we are today. And, it's like most people, most people fall into sales tax and then they get bit by the bug. Some people fall into it and hate it. They can't wait to get out. Other people get bit by the bug and they live and breathe in, sales tax. And I'm sort of the latter.
What is it about it that you think why you got bit by the bug? Is just you're detail oriented? What about your personality you think attracted you to it?
I like a new challenge all the time. And, every day we get to speak to people, some of the issues are the same, but their fact patterns are different. So every day we hear new stories and how we can help people. And, when you're creating securities, people can use a security. It creates liquidity. There's a purpose for everything I've done in my life up to that. But this is where we really get to step in and help someone, and people tell us thank you. And it just feels good knowing that you've saved someone from the bad old state, or you help them figure out a way so that they don't become a target of the bad old state. It's a totally different feeling. And like I said, no stress. I mean, it's stressful when you're talking to these people, but you're generally helping them realize there's light at the end of the tunnel. And then from a business perspective, it's not cyclical. I mean, yeah, states do this, states do that. But when times are good, people are out there and they're selling more, so they need, services like those we offer. And when times are bad, states are hurting. And what they do is they go out and hire a whole bunch of more auditors. And now the auditors are auditing more companies. And again, our clients need our help. So there's really not a lot of ups and downs, in this type of business, which, heck, that's where a lot of the stress comes in on the other side.
So what did you do first for your career in the tax world?
I was, just for the different investments and everything that we were working on, there were taxes that had to be paid. But as far as getting into this as a full-time basis, there was a CPA firm out there who had done nothing but sales tax for 25 years. And had the opportunity to go work with them. And for the better part of a decade, I was a director with them. So it really helped hone my skills. I learned a whole lot there. And that's where I came to love what I do.
You decided to start your own firm.
Yes.
And you sat your wife down. And what did you tell her?
Very interesting conversation. I told her that I think that I wanted to start my own firm and that we were going to start slow. And that it was going to perhaps be 6 months before I could, take any money out for a paycheck. And it might even be, a good 60 days before we started seeing our first clients. And she wasn't very happy with me. She was very scared. She was nervous. But she was very supportive also. And she said, I'll do whatever you want to do. I'll be supportive, which is one thing I love about my wife. It didn't turn out that way, though. I mean, while I was at this other firm, I really became one of the faces of the firm. And a lot of people knew me. And when I put out announcements on LinkedIn and, all of social media, and all of a sudden my phone started ringing off the wall. I mean, within minutes of putting out this information. And so much for my plan of having a nice, slow, steady building of staff and everything else. I mean, I was playing catch up from day number one. It's a great problem to have. It's a great feeling to know that you've made an impact in enough people's lives out there that people were searching you out and saying, hey, I want to do business.
So then tell me about the trajectory a little bit.
We went from 0 to 160, not even 0 to 60. We went in relatively overnight. And within 9 months, we had 18 people working for us. So we built an incredible sales tax returns business. We were doing 10,000 returns annualized within our first 9 months worth of business, where I've talked to other people out there who start their business, and some of them don't even get to that level ever, let alone in the first 9 months. So, very, very fortunate. A lot of things went my way over the years. I'd made great contacts while I was at this, accounting firm, this CPA firm. So it's all good problems.
So it was swamped, and then something else hit to create even more of a tsunami.
Oh, yeah. We had the Wayfair decision. So when the Wayfair decision, which is, South Dakota versus Wayfair, a U.S. Supreme Court case, and this is what I mentioned earlier, it literally changed the way that sales tax is done. And this is the case that talks about a physical presence, and they overturned 51 years of precedent. I can remember there was one company out there, a software company, asked me to give a presentation on the impact. There were over 2,500 people at this webinar. And for the next 5 days, I had consultations from morning to night half-hour consultations. 18 a day in some days. And people from all around the world. So you took an already, we were doing great, but now you've poured kerosene on top of this, and things just have really exploded since then.
Now your wife is nervous for other reasons.
Yeah, now she doesn't see me. So it's feast or famine.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you wanted me to be successful. I am.
What else should people know about some of the stories you're going to tell on the podcast, Sales Tax and More? Thanks for sharing some of the background.
And my pleasure. A lot of cautionary stories out there, especially for CPAs and other accounting professionals. I've never had a situation when someone has come to me with a big problem and said, my CPA didn't tell me, or my bookkeeper told me otherwise. There's always someone in that story that provided some sort of guidance or a lack of guidance that have gotten them into the position they are. So we're going to share a lot of stories like that. And, a lot of CPAs out there, a lot of accounting professionals just don't offer sales tax services. But even when we have that written into our agreements, our clients think that, hey, tax, you're supposed to know all types of tax. You're my trusted advisor. You need to be letting me be aware of these things. So some of the things we're going to be talking about are just how to talk to your clients. I like to use an analogy that, sometimes you're like the family care practitioner. Someone's going to come into you once a year, do a checkup, you ask them certain questions. And if something, do some tests. If something doesn't make sense or there's potential exposure there, you don't have to be the expert. You can then call in an expert. Or you can hire someone, or you can, start offering new services. But for the most part, you just have to know the basic vocabulary. You have to know some of the basic issues out there so that you can protect your clients. And in protecting your clients, you'll protect yourselves. So that's a lot of the different stories out there. We'll talk about how it's not only the states that you got to worry about. Sometimes you go to sell your company, you've never had any problems in the world, and all of a sudden someone's asking you to put half of the money aside into an escrow account because you've got outstanding sales tax issues that you didn't even know about. So these are the types of cases. They're really cautionary tales, highlighting some of the things like most companies I talk to and most advisors, I talk to, don't know that third parties, people who don't even work for their clients or who work for you directly, they can actually create this link or connection that we call nexus. Mm-hmm. So those are the types of things. We just want to raise the level of awareness, and we want to do it in a way that's relatable to you.
Yeah. Michael, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Everyone can check out salestaxandmore.com. If you have questions, you need more information, check out more episodes of the Sales Tax and More podcast. And thanks for letting me be with you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe and check out all of the resources we have out on the web.